Welcome to the Overnight Success Podcast. I'm your host, Cristy Lime, and I'm really excited to bring in Sharon Gutierrez today. Sharon is a dynamic powerhouse. She is the founder of the Pretty Simple app. She's a high level marketing coach, a best selling author of The Manifest List, podcaster, and a motivational speaker. I'm so excited because she's brought not only mentorship and motivation into my life, but so many others. She brings a straightforward attitude and unique ability to break down marketing skills in a digestible way where we can actually learn and then execute those things. I really love Sharon's story because she's from Alaska. And with that, she's also lived in Hawaii. And now we work side by side in a co-working space where we are in San Antonio. And so with that, she's worked in marketing for many, many years. And I would really love to turn it over to you, Sharon, and say thank you for being with me, but also hear more about your story because on the Overnight Success, we're here to hear your couch to success story. And I'm not saying you're on the couch, but I do know you've grown up in some poverty and things like that. So
Mhm.
really want to talk about all the things and whatever you're feeling comfortable to share.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I love the concept of your podcast because it's so fucking true. like, uh, I think that I do well at making things look really easy. And I've heard that like throughout my life. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, none of it's easy or comes natural to me. Even like people or speaking or even like being like nurturing, like all of these things I've like had to like learn to like kind of cultivate over my life. But it's like it's just years of experience. Like it's when I talk to a lot of new business owners, I'm like, girl, like I built my first website when I was 14, and that was like over 20 years ago. Now I can count things in decades. At least I was like a teenager, but still, it's been some time. But yeah, I think for me, one of the most important places to start when it comes to like my entrepreneurial journey is the fact that I came from a very non-traditional household. I grew up a single parent home. My father went to prison. My mom, we actually were in San Antonio when I was little, which I kind of forgot about when I moved back here, but like whatever. So then we move up to Alaska as my mom and me and my younger siblings. And I was around 6. And my mom worked full time and she did the very best that she could. But she also didn't really believe in school. She wanted to homeschool. But if you kind of do the math on that, like if you're working full time, it's really hard to homeschool your kids. And so I ended up growing up, a lot in isolation, with my siblings and like starting to help raise them from a really young age. And so I feel like I started off feeling very behind from other people, like as far as education. I still struggle with that and I can be a little insecure, not so much now, but definitely through my 20s. And I was still social. My mom actually ran a single parent like nonprofit organization. And so that allowed me to like have friends and things like that. And then the website building started when I was like, so I was in the homeschool program, and part of that was we would get a computer and that we could use. It was kind of like a borrowed computer. And so in my time of, hanging out at home a lot, not going to school, I started building and selling websites. So that was like just I had no idea that was a small business or entrepreneur or something that not everyone could do, but it was just like it was a hobby, it was something that was fun for me. And so yeah, I was just definitely like a really nerdy little kid.
Well, and I think that's so important to talk about too, is where you have this space where you're really pushing through the grit, right? And it's like
Mhm.
this you could have allowed the journey of a single parent and being homeschooled and isolation to hold you back. But instead, Sharon, working with you, I've seen you show up, you bring the energy. You're the founder of Solopreneur, you're the founder of Geeks and you're the founder of Pretty Simple,
Yeah.
right? You're an international speaker. You've written a book. Like, there's so many things here that so many people would be like, oh, I can't do it because. And you're like, no, I'm going to push through that. So, I guess one of the questions I have on that front is how? Like, how do you choose to move forward through that? And I know that's such a broad question, right? But how do you choose that? That maybe imposter syndrome or something like that. And I really like this conversation because there's a lot of men in the business world, and that's where I personally have struggled. So I guess I'm asking not only for our audience, but for me, because I
Yeah.
think that there's something really powerful behind how you show up.
Absolutely. Well, like, I think that kind of this is gonna be answered in a couple different parts, but one is the journey of entrepreneurship for me. So my first official like business that I started, I was in my mid-20s. I had actually ended up in college, so yay me. Went to college. It was hard. I worked very, very hard and spent a lot of time in like tutoring classes and remedial math and things like that. But I graduated with a 3.9 GPA. So like I worked my ass off. And then I ended up moving to Hawaii with my younger sister. And I got one of my first big jobs was as a marketing director for a multi-million-dollar nonprofit. And so it kind of just like, I was like interning and then just quickly moved up until I was like websites and social media and running fundraising events and speaking and like doing this whole thing. And through that, I was able to do a lot of networking and talk to a lot of people. And, I think naturally people are just like, oh, you're in marketing. Can you help me? And so I started building, marketing strategies for people for free. And then they would be like, "Well, then can you help me, like, do it?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I guess I could," you know? And then I talked to a friend, and she encouraged me. She had a social media company, and she's like, "You don't need anything extra to start a business. Like, just decide you're gonna charge money for the thing that you do, and then you have a business." I was like, "Are you sure? That sounds a little shady to me." It just, like, had never occurred to me. I wasn't raised around entrepreneurs, and, even, like, in networking, like, it just felt something so far away. You talk about imposter syndrome. Like, I knew I was good as a marketing director. I knew I was good at, like, this, like, marketing concept, like, naturally good at it, but I also felt so insecure as a person where I just felt there was no way that someone like me, like, could do what these people were doing. Like, I felt like they just had to have known all of these things that I didn't know, and that it felt like an impossible gap to try and cover. So when she told me that, I was like, "Okay, I guess I'll try." And that's how my first business started, is I started saying yes, and I was working full time, so I started hiring people. So really quickly, I started building out the agency model, which I hadn't worked in an agency, and kind of went from there. So I did that for 10 years, and that was, like, a lot of hard lessons. I definitely feel like that's when I kind of the agency was such a time for me because I went through so many different changes. Like when I went through a phase where I felt so insecure that I like had the agency and the name and everything, and I was so removed from the marketing that people would like be like, "Oh, I'm going to take you away from your job." And I'm like, "Oh, like I own it, but whatever." And so I just like cuz I was so insecure about having that title. And so I kind of went through that and learned that. And then I also like it was very male dominated. It still is. And I remember going to a marketing conference in San Diego and took my SEO guy with me, one of the guys working for me. And we went and there was like 200 agencies in the room and there were maybe two other women. And I was really excited to talk to one of them and I was like, "Hey girl, like guess what? We're here." And she was just like, "I'm here with my husband to go shopping." And she's like, it was just so rude. I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And so like I just navigated that whole thing, and I realized that people would not like talk to me. They would only talk to the guy that was with me, Lim, and ask him all of the questions. But that's when I learned a lot about allyship and what being a true ally means because he, such a saint, would just redirect everyone back to me and be like, "Oh yeah, well you should ask Sharon. She's my boss. You should ask Sharon. She makes the decisions. You should ask Sharon." And so I think I like started gaining a lot of that confidence because of like the people that were able to like stand by me and like sponsor me in those conversations, even though they worked for me. It's like I needed that in that space of like kind of getting my confidence. So I think that was a big lesson in the agency. And then learning, of course, about like profitability and all of those things. So the agency was 10 years. And then basically, I had built it to a place. I had clients like all over the US. I had a team, and I had just gotten to a place where I realized that a lot of people would love to be there, but I was so burnt out. I was like, that was all of my 20s. Like, life is short, and I don't think I could double down. And like, I've learned the lessons, and I think I could build a really successful, like, cool agency. But I was like, I don't think I'm happy. And so I closed it, like shifted everything and went to full-time consulting because at the end of the day, it's what I really liked. And that is the decision that allowed me to like start all of the other endeavors is because like I had really honed in on coaching really well and building out strategies with solopreneurs. And then that gave me time to be able to like do more speaking and to do the bullet journal and to eventually launch the app. So that's like kind of like part of that journey.
Yeah, you talked about so much here too, and so I want to
Yeah.
unpack a little bit.
Yeah.
Playing in an agency in the male dominated space is not playing, like you executed, you showed up, you did the work, right? But being in that industry and then taking the leap and in I actually am going to jump over here because the next question I want to ask you is about kind of this tech adventure. So you're building this agency, you make this decision, you hit burnout, which I think every business owner I've ever talked to has done that
100.
before, right? And so you really made this tough decision. Even though you're in burnout, it's still, just conversations I've had, there's like an identity behind building something. And so I guess
Mhm.
I'd be curious, how was that in shutting down a company? And then secondly, would love to hear how now you're playing in this tech space. And so what does that journey look like and how has it been being, I would say, in a probably even more male dominated industry?
Yeah. Um, the identity thing is so real. I struggled with it. I do believe, like, I'm a really technical person, but I'm also, like, woo adjacent. But I just, like, whether it's God, universe, however you wanna see it, I think, like, we know in our bodies when it's time to let go of something, and the universe, or whatever, has a way of kind of shifting when we hold on for too long. And I felt that that was what happened with the agency, and I'm, like, very thankful that it ended up working out the way that it did. But I was so scared. I was scared to, like, lose my identity because I had spent those 10 years getting my confidence. A big part of that was, like, I was in Hawaii. I moved to Atlanta, and in Hawaii, I struggled because it's very heavily Japanese influenced, and there's a lot of focus on, like, humility. It's not, and that was something, like, where it's just, like, I didn't come across humble enough. It was just like, "You're too loud and too much, and the heels are too much," and, like, all of these things, and you need to learn to be more demure, and I just, like, I tried to fit that, and it didn't work well, so I got to, I moved to Atlanta, and I was like, "Oh, okay, here it's more metrics-based." I moved really quickly, and I kind of found my voice, and so I'd kind of gone through that evolution and felt comfortable in my voice, but I was really scared to let go of the agency because it was consistent. It's something that I was like, "Oh, I've done this for years. I know how to do this." And, like, also, who am I to close this thing down and then just build a personal brand and, like, be the face of my own company and get clients and do all of that. So, I mean, it was a big, like, jump. It was scary, and there was a lot of tears around it, but I really find a lot of value in, like, journaling and things like that and processing, and I think it was just, like, really listening to my body and, like, meditation and being like, "Okay, it's time to let go of this thing," and I know, like, because things just started to not, like, work as well, and I was like, "If I don't let go of this soon, it's gonna end up crumbling completely, and I don't want that to happen. I want it to be a smooth transition," and so, like, that was, like, closing down, but I'm so thankful for that, right? But I think intuitively, we know. It's like it's a toxic relationship, right? Like, we know when we're in a space that we shouldn't be, and, like, for whatever reasons, and often it's, like, insecurity or whatever, like, and there's even just lessons to learn sometimes. We stay in it, but then eventually it, like, pushes us and we have to make that decision, and I think that's been a very strong theme in my entire life is just, like, making the decision to do the harder thing and, like, jump when I know it's time to jump, which is scary, and probably why I've lived in so many states.
Yeah. No, you are speaking so many things here that I'm like, I don't even know which one to unpack because there's so much value in what your journey has been. And so as you're going through all of this and you made that decision, you started consulting, but then you at some point decided I want to build an app. And like you said, you're naturally good at marketing and you're naturally a little bit techy. So how did you choose to build Pretty Simple, which also tell us what Pretty Simple is?
Yeah. So Pretty Simple is a leads tracking, well, software now for solo entrepreneurs. It started during COVID. So, funny thing. So, circle, like, so when I closed the agency, I actually had gone to Hawaii, back to Hawaii to meet with some of my team because I chopped it up and I actually gave clients to all the people that had worked for me. And so I was there and I was, like, offboarding all these clients. I had a very beautiful amount of, like, contracts signed, ready to go back and, with the consulting full time. And so I was there. But on my way back, people were wearing masks because there was this little thing that people were worried about called COVID. And I'm like, oh, when's the best time to close down your most consistent stream of revenue and, like, jump into marketing consulting? It's not during a pandemic. So I get back, and within a couple of weeks, almost every single contract that I had canceled or was just like, we can't move forward because, like, it was Atlanta, like, it was, a smoothie company franchise. They're like, we're gonna close. Like, we can't, we're just gonna go, close everything down, and do the bare minimum. And that's completely fair and valid. But, like, all things, like, it gave me the space to be like, okay, I'm kind of bored. I like pivoted a lot of things. I started doing, free masterminds and stuff like that to be able to stay connected with like entrepreneurs. But then my lead developer, Michael Morgan, he had worked for me for years. We met networking in Hawaii. He was my lead developer, a goddamn unicorn because he also was a good designer. And we got along well. And he had called and was just like, hey, like, I'm really bored also. And we're both, and I say bored, I mean like stressed, right? It's just like, what the fuck is going to happen? My business is like sinking. Like, I'm in Atlanta alone, me and my dog, just like thinking about life. And he's just like, and he's in Hawaii and he's like, oh, you know what people don't want to do is build websites. And I'm like, right. So, he's like, let's build something. And so I was like, I have an idea. I was like, I have this like thing kind of like sketched out, like wireframed out, where I wanted to have like software, like as an agency owner, didn't have hundreds of leads. Like I had like, I think our top was like 40 clients or something. But I had a few dozen leads at a time and I didn't need big pieces of software, like HubSpot or things like that. I just needed something that was really simple and I wanted the data. So I would use like spreadsheets, but I tried everything. Like I tried spreadsheets and whiteboards and things on my phone. I was just like, how do I keep track of these leads? Because I get them through networking, through speaking, and the sales cycle, as you know, can sometimes be like 3 months to a year, right? And so I was like, I want to create this thing that's like, I want it to be really pretty. I want it to be simple. And I just want a way for, freelancers and like boutique agencies to be able to keep track of their potential sales. And so we built it and built a really shitty MVP. And because it was bad. But I was like, I want to make sure this is a thing before I go all in on this because I was like, I don't know. I don't know anything about tech. Like, it took me a really long time to accept that I was in tech. I was just like, I don't know. We just built software. Like, that's something people do, right? And so I hired some friends who were micro influencers and I was like, here's $100, promote my app and like have people pay $3. It was like $3 on the website to sign up for the beta version. And it sold, And so I was like, okay, cool. So there's a market for this. And I took that as a sign of yes. And that's kind of what like shifted me into the tech space. And, fast forward a year or so, Michael or Monty was getting ready to leave Hawaii and was like, "Oh, I think I'm gonna move to the mainland." In Hawaii, they say mainland. In Alaska, I grew up saying lower 48. So, like, I switched back and forth, but, moved to lower 48, and I was like, "Well, I'm in Atlanta, like, you wanna hang out here?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, where are you thinking?" Because 'Cause I'm like, "I don't have anywhere to go. My family's all in Alaska, and I've been floating around by myself for a decade, right?" And he was just like, so we looked at all these cities and San Antonio just won. So we were like, cool, let's move to San Antonio. And so packed up our lives and just like moved here. I knew no one. So I'm really thankful for the different like co-working spaces and excuse me, events like that where I could go and like meet people. But yeah, that's basically what brought me to San Antonio where I just like got here, knew no one, had a tech company, and then yeah, kind of went from there.
That's so cool, Sharon. And I got chills multiple times as you're sharing this story because it's like you're showing up and you, like you mentioned, you're doing the hard thing, you're getting out of your own way. One thing that you've touched on several times that I'd love to talk about. So, our audience is building businesses and they're learning from these overnight successes. And
Hmm.
you've talked about networking several times and going to Hawaii and networking and Atlanta and networking and in San Antonio, I know you network, but you've also built a networking community. And so would love to hear how, and I've heard a phenomenal workshop from you as well on how to network. So if you could give maybe like a couple tidbits on your experience, but also what successful networking is, I think that'd be really powerful for our audience.
Yeah, I'm such a huge fan. So to me, like networking was the thing that helped me to build my first company. It was going to a networking event that like consistently and becoming a member under the nonprofit where I got to just meet all these business owners. And because of that, like I stayed in that group. And when I opened my agency, I switched seats. And that helped me to like learn a lot about networking, but also get clients. You have to make connections with people. It's just one of the fastest ways to market yourself, especially when you're in early stages. And a lot of people try to avoid the sales part. They're like, oh, I love this thing, but I hate sales. And I'm like, congratulations, that's being a business owner. And that's why most businesses fail is because you like hate this thing and you got to figure out a way to do it because no one is going to do it for you. Right. So building that network. But I think I approach networking a little bit differently because I don't like this whole feeling of going, handing out business cards, leaving, and then there's no connection. So I try and just be open. I try and make a few quality connections in each place that I go. And I always follow up. And that's a big thing is that we've all done it before, gone to all these events and met all these people, and then you never hear from anyone again. So you stand out automatically by sending an email, sending a LinkedIn, and being like, do you want to have a one to one? Do you want to connect? Or it was nice meeting you. Here's a memory about our conversation. It was nice talking to you about XYZ. Let's stay in touch on LinkedIn. But like moving them through like your sales funnel a little bit, whether they're, referral partners or clients or just business acquaintances. So like taking that approach of just like meeting people, genuinely connecting, quality over quantity, and then finding a way to keep that relationship going. Now, here in San Antonio, I've always done it where I've always liked to run like little things. I think I had a group for a while in Hawaii called Street Smart Intellects. And we would have like roundtable discussions, and it was like an invite only group. It was super fun. Did that for a few years. And here in San Antonio, like I've started Geek Stand, which is a software engineering group. Like I built that because I wanted to make friends. And then that has grown over the years to like 2,500 meetup members or whatever. And then last year I started the solopreneur networking meetup. But I have found that for myself because I've had so much experience networking, but then also I've been very intentional about learning about how to network. I've taken courses, I've read books. Like I've asked like anyone who I know that was good at it, especially when I was younger. I was like, what do you do? How do I successfully do this? And they would give me all this advice and then I would do it. And because I believe in following up, I would tell those people 6 months later, hey, remember we talked and you told me to do this, this, and this? Like I did the things. Is there anything else? And so I built a really great reputation for like following through on things, right? So now I feel like it's kind of come full circle where I get to build these communities. I don't go to like events as much myself. Like I'm usually kind of busy like running them or in the background somewhere. But it's been neat to be able to kind of create that like and take everything that I've learned over the years about creating like real meaningful connections and then create spaces to do that myself and say, okay, there's a different way to do things. We can go and do the quick business pass out thing, over here. But for me, like, let's just slow down a little bit and connect intentionally and become a community because we need that. We need community now, especially more than ever, and in person community as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's so powerful. I appreciate you sharing that. And you really do a good job at cultivating community and you do a good job at following up. And I can understand and I love that you listen to your audience, you tested the market, you said there is a need for this lead tracking app, which I would imagine you're using to continue to follow up, right? And so that's great that you found that niche in the marketplace and you're serving solopreneurs to do so. And so we've talked a lot about your kind of journey to get to today. I would love to hear, as the past 20 years have gone, right? Like, what is that quote unquote overnight success? What does success look like to you?
Hmm. It's It's changed for me over the years as it does for all of us, right? And I also want to always acknowledge that success gets to look so different and there's no shame, especially like as women, we're really bad about like judging each other for like what we consider to be success. And so I want to like first of all always say I am so supportive of all the different forms of success. For some people, success is like having a family and kids and like being able to be a stay-at-home mom, and I love that. My version is not that. Mine is like I for me, success is being able to make a living, like, doing the things that I love and I'm passionate about and, like, being me and being able to be authentic and, like, I guess creating impact. Like, I want to know that one day, like, when I'm not around, there's people that can be like, "You know what? Like, she made a difference in my life, even if it was a really small way." And then, yeah, just, like, having meaningful connections and meaningful relationships in my life. I think as, like, time goes by and you get older, you start realizing more and more how important just, like, people are in your life. Um, I'm single and, like, I don't have kids and I don't want kids, but I've created so much space for so many just, like, amazing people and, like, built community, whether it's here or even in Hawaii and different places, and I have friends that I keep in touch with. So I think those things are all layered and kind of, like, all ball together and just, like, trying to constantly learn and just be the best, happiest version of myself that I can be. And there's not a definitive, like, goal that's, like, magically gonna get hit someday where I'm like, "This is when I'm successful." I used to struggle with that because I wanted to feel successful. I still don't necessarily like, I feel like I've come a really long way. I don't know that I just like wake up and I'm like, "Oh man, like I've done it." I'm just like I feel like I'm doing it. I feel like I'm in the journey, but a big part of my growth has been to just really enjoy being in the journey and moving toward that just like I'm doing basically everything I want to do and I get to grow and keep continuing to do it in different ways and let it evolve.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I agree with you. And I love asking that question to our
Mhm.
guests because everybody's answer is so different. And the
Yeah.
way that you show up, that is such a unique and a valuable conversation and context and lens is how you identify success. So thank you for sharing that. And this question's coming a little preemptive in my podcast because I wanted to ask you this later, but I think it naturally follows that. And so what is next for you? Like as you continue to build and look toward like the future because you mentioned too is like those goalposts are constantly moving, right? And
Mhm.
so you're showing up and you're like, well, success tomorrow might be this, but you already hit this, so then you're moving it forward. And I think that's the powerful thing about enjoying the process, enjoying the journey. And yeah, so I would love to hear kind of like what's the big vision of what's next because to me you have a lot of success and you've cultivated that by showing up and creating these spaces and really working on you too, right? Like before the podcast, we talked a little bit about how mental health is so important. And so would love to pull on the mental health, but let's answer first, if you don't mind, like what's the next thing?
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, every year I am really intentional about setting my word for the year, and I think you are too, right? And so this year was really focused on visibility. So, ironically, it involved me stepping back before I could step forward, right? And so, looking at everything, the whole overnight success like concept, I think one thing to keep in mind for entrepreneurs is that like stepping back and evaluating and letting things shift and grow is a really big part of that because like as we grow and change like our businesses do too, especially when you're building like a lifestyle business. So I kind of like stepped back early this year and was like, okay, what's everything that's working, everything that's not working? And one of the biggest things and very transparently like right after the elections we had Geek Stand, which was my software engineering group, and we met up and there was just a little bit of a heaviness because like that negatively impacted a lot of people. And there were people that were coming up to me, and there was a general kind of people trying to understand where I stood on things and whether or not I was a safe person. And to me, that killed me because I realized that I hadn't been open enough with things. And all of my events are focused on creating safe spaces. And I was like, if I haven't done that well enough that people don't feel comfortable wherever they stand to be able to know that like I'm going to come from a place of like no judgment and love and protection, then I'm doing something wrong. And so I kind of looked at everything, and that includes like business and visibility. And I was just like, what is not working? And I realized that it was just time for the next phase of growth for me, which is I have went from being really awkward and shy as a kid, like really, really awkward, really shy. Still feel like that. And in case anyone wonders, I am like the most awkward person. It just isn't always super obvious, but talk to me long enough and you will realize it. But it went from that to, like, having the agency and being just really insecure and trying to be demure and professional, and then it's, like, finding my voice and then being, like, more comfortable with, like, "Okay, this is who I am. I don't need to, like, code switch so much to be accepted," and also, like, it's okay, like, people will hire me if they like me. I don't have to be this other person and try and make everyone happy. To, like, going into tech and being really like, "Oh, I'm in tech, and now I'm, like, insecure about this," and then realize, "Okay, fine, it's good." So, like, gone through, like, all of these different phases in, like, identity, but I realized that I have always, like, even in, like, the publicness and visibility of things, I've always shared this, like, very small piece of who I am in business, and over time, I've gotten more comfortable about sharing my story and, like, things like that, but I realized I'm like, "There's so much more." Like, there's so much more. I actually have a podcast, around businesses called Building Empires, and, like, I'm not doing content for that because it's getting switched over, but I was like, I love talking about business. I love talking to entrepreneurs, but I'm like, "But I wanna talk to the whole person," right? And I was like, I want to be able to if there's experiences that I have or things that I know or things that I can share that can help somebody to, like, step into their own just, like, ownership of who they are and their own identity, then I wanna be able to do that too. And then I also believe that there's so much power in conversations, like the ones that we're having right now, that it's like it could be really easy to phone it in and do the very like surfacey, like, and then next up, I'm really excited about XYZ, but I'm just like, no, I get to step back and be more open and vulnerable and just be like, yeah, no, like here's the real process that's happening and like the thought process behind making these decisions. And so I was like, okay, what's next? And I was like, I need to like figure out a way to start sharing more than just the business. And so that actually has come out. It's about to release soon, but like relaunching and rebranding my podcast to RBF, which is Resting Bitch Face, the RBF podcast. And tagline is They Told Me to Smile. And I'm putting that out and start building out these episodes that aren't just around business, but around queerness, identity, activism, sustainability, mental health. And I am so excited for that next phase in my journey to just be more open. And it's been like, even right now, to be completely transparent, it's been an adjustment because like as I'm talking about it, I see people get visibly uncomfortable. And I was like, well, I'm saying things that make you uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, good. Like, I need to like be ready for that because like I've done a really good job at always being like, okay, I can like, make everyone comfortable, which is always, it's a good thing. But sometimes you have to take a stronger stand for things. And so yeah, stepping into that space. So I'm kind of excited and nervous, but excited.
Yeah, no, Sharon, that's so exciting. And I'm glad that you took a moment. So I didn't realize it's almost the end of 25, but we have the same word this year. Mine's visibility as well. So that's
Hmm.
really cool. And with that, I think it's important. What I heard from you is that analogy of like kind of a bow and arrow. So you like pulled back so that you could spring forward, right? And with your relaunch of the podcast, it sounds so aligned with who you are. You're good at tech, you're good at marketing. You're also really good with people and you've cultivated so much and you have such a unique we're all unique, right? And that's what makes entrepreneurship a fun journey is we wear a lot of hats. But I love that you're going to unveil that in your podcast. And so however we can help promote that, would love to. And we'll definitely drop the RBF links in the show notes for the listeners. And so with that, as you've navigated all of this, I imagine on RBF, you're going to be talking about some mental health things, right? And
Yes.
so I don't want to skip over this. I think that doing a business is such a interesting concept and scaling as an entrepreneur because you're constantly hitting these glass ceilings. And I can say that in our company, you've been in business longer than I have. And I know you've talked to tons of people and hallway conversations like you have left a lasting impact, not only on myself, but other people in the space. And it's really cool to see. And so, you can only break through those glass ceilings if you have the mental capabilities and capacity. And so mental health is, such an important piece of being an entrepreneur. I'd love to hear more about your stance on that.
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in like talking about it. So thank you for asking that question. Depression and anxiety are things that I have struggled with my entire life from since I was like a young teenager, honestly. And so that has affected me a lot. And it's been amazing to me and myself. I can be proud of myself for how much I've accomplished while in the midst of that. Like I have generalized anxiety disorder. And so anxiety is a very real thing for me. It doesn't take away from my efficiency in life, but it does take away from I need to find ways to sometimes accommodate, right? And over the years, I believe in therapy so much. Big proponent. We have so much stigma, especially as minorities. And it's because these institutions that are here to help us with our mental health have not historically been safe, right? And so I I really do believe in like finding if you can, and I know it's not always accessible. So like 100%, if there's not accessible, like read YouTube, like find ways to start like tackling and understanding your mental health better, just for listeners as a whole. But if you can and therapy is accessible, like go to therapy and find somebody who resonates with you. It might take a couple of people, but show up and like find a thing that you're ready to kind of work through. I've gone through therapy many times. I think my first time I went was in college. We were not a vibe. And like I was like, "Oh, girl, you do not get me like at all." And like I know I am not the most refined person in the world, but imagine me at 20. Like, okay, this is a lot of years of me working on myself and a lot of years of therapy, and I was just like, this is not happening, She wanted me to get in touch with my inner child and I was like, "No, hard fucking pass." So there was a lot of resistance. I tried antidepressants when I was younger, but I was also drinking and being very wild, and like so that wasn't like a great fit, right? And then I've like over the years, like I've gone back to different therapists and like been like, okay, cool, like let me work on, like I know I'm depressed. Like how do I start coping with it? How do I learn tools? Really coming to terms with anxiety. Like I knew I had dealt with depression for a long time, but anxiety was like not until my like mid 20s, really understanding that I was like, oh, it's not normal to, like, have a panic attack before going into a grocery store, like, and even now, like, I have anxiety. I was really excited that I went into the library the other day and checked out books because, like, that's always been something that's really overwhelming for me for a myriad of reasons, like, speaking, I speak, but I get so fucking nervous, right? And so I've learned a lot of tools to, like, help with that, but I feel like I'm like, "Man, I really wish." I don't have regrets necessarily. I don't know if that's true. I think we all have, like, a little bit of regrets. I don't know if I believe that statement, but there are things that I regret, and I've made poor choices in my life. Let's say that, honestly. But I really do wish that I would have been more open to therapy younger or learning about mental health or, like, meditation, right? Like, people had told me about it, but I was so had so much value wrapped up in, like, me doing and working and work ethic and being strong that, like, to me mental health and like dealing with those things was weakness. And I didn't want to admit it. I was embarrassed by it. I thought people wouldn't want to work with me. And then as I've gone through the years and like worked with just very many amazing, people, I've like learned so much about myself. I've been able to go through so much healing, through so much forgiveness, and that's like a huge part of who I am today. And so, yeah, like mental health is a real thing to think about. Like when we talk about what contributes to depression, it's kind of like a little like triangle, right? Because it's like our chemistry, like our body chemistry. It's our current experiences and our past experiences, right? And so those things. So we don't have control necessarily over chemistry, but there are like medications that can help some people, right? In our past, like we have the opportunity to go and we can heal and like find tools for that. But then like our current, like that can be really hard for entrepreneurs because literally like our entire lifestyle is uncertainty because you're building something, right? There's stress, there's cash flow issues, there's people issues, there's visibility issues and branding and PR and like all of this feedback. And so it's a perfect little situation for someone to deal with mental health issues, and then because of the stress and the long hours and like all the things, it just kind of like self perpetuates. And so, yeah, I firmly believe like if you are in that space, like there are resources to call. There's even like free resources and stuff. And like, I think going through and just kind of saying, okay, cool. I know that this is something important that I want to explore and like understand a little bit better. And then just find a step. It doesn't have to be the perfect step or the only step, but just find a step to move forward and kind of explore that a little bit deeper.
That's so powerful. Yeah, I completely agree. Mental health is a very big component of everything that we do as entrepreneurs and as
Hmm.
humans, right? And there is a stigma of, oh, I'm going to be weak if. And I think too, I have heard, depression is the past and anxiety is the future. And so kudos to you for showing up and doing the scary thing and going in the library or going on those stages because it's a very important piece of breaking through those glass ceilings. And as entrepreneurs, I think there's a lot of times overwhelm and it's, oh my gosh, I have all these things to do. But to your point, you're like, let me just break down this one barrier at a time. And I think that's so powerful. And so, you've clearly executed, you've clearly learned a lot along the way. You've picked up tools, you've shared a lot of wisdom and knowledge with people around you, not only online, but in person. And so I'd be curious, what book or YouTube, you mentioned YouTube, who are you most influenced by? Like, I guess the question could be answered multiple ways. I think you're a breadth of knowledge. So I'm going to ask you is like, do you have a book recommendation? Do you have an influencer recommendation? Do you have a YouTube channel? Like, where are you consuming some of this knowledge? And what do you think would land best with the audience?
Yeah. So I think that one of the resources, like, okay, so as far as like the personal development side, I think one of the most impactful books for me has been The Four Agreements. I don't know if you've read that before. I think it's just a really good way to kind of like, it's definitely like kind of like new agey vibes, but it really helped me to kind of understand. It talks about like not making assumptions and not taking things personally. And I think that's like a big part of like that anxiety piece is like we're constantly looking at the forward and we're self-conscious about ourselves. And like when you can kind of learn to like separate that. So that's one resource where I'm like, oh, reading like books like that is like really helpful to me. Another resource is journaling. Like I am a big fan of that. And like I have the bullet journal, the manifest list, so you can buy it if you want, but you can also just do it for free, which is like a daily practice of like what are 6 things you want to attract into your life. And taking the time to like just write those out and like just enjoy that process and just like feel it. And then what are 20 things that you're thankful for? And there's a reason it's 20 things. It's because it's really easy to be thankful for 3 things or 5 things. But when you start having to get into like 10, then you are like, wait, what else? And then you have to build a habit of like having gratitude for things outside this like immediate like list that we have, where it's like I love my friends and my family and then my house and then my car and then I have sight and then like that I'm healthy enough to run and like I love my coffee in the morning and my rituals, and like you get to dig really deep into gratitude, which is such a grounding thing, right? So you kind of go from the space of like visualization and daydream to like a very grounded gratitude, and then ask yourself, what are 3 things I can do today to move that forward? And that pulls us into act. And so I think practices like that are really helpful in like starting to kind of like reset your brain and building some consistency and routine, but also forward momentum in what you're working on.
I love that. It's such a nice full circle to how we open this podcast, where you can take your knowledge and you can explain a complex situation to a way that is so applicable that makes somebody want to execute. I'm like, where's the journal? I got to do it now.
Yeah,
Like,
I'll give you one. I
it's
have
so
one in my office
powerful.
for you.
Okay, perfect. And so, with that, I guess the last question I have for you before we kind of start wrapping up is there anything that I didn't ask you that you think I should have asked you? And would you like to kind of answer that question?
That is a good question. I feel like you covered so many different great things. I think if there's anything that I want to reiterate out of like the whole process, because I know that we've talked about so many things in such a short amount of time. And thank you for creating the space to be able to do that. That does like matter, and your intention into it is like very obvious. But it's just like that kindness to yourself of like as you're going through this entrepreneurial journey, that it is you can go through steps of like being excited about the next steps, but also just like slowing down and just, like, enjoying the journey, like and it sounds so fucking cheesy, it kills me, like, as I'm like, "Oh, I've heard it 1,000 times," and then sometime in the last, like, 2 years, it just became real to me, like, something just shifted in my head where I was like, I 5 years ago, I would have no idea where I would be right now, much less 10 years or 20 years ago, right? So Sharon from a year ago would be happy and proud of me today. And so I can't imagine like that future version of me and like where she ends up going, right? And so I'm just like, oh, it is like it all comes together, and there's like this is the time you're going to be your youngest, this is your time you're going to be, maybe not healthiest, but whatever, like this is like the prime that you're in right now, this is like your moment that you have, you're not promised tomorrow. And so it's just like, oh, like learning to just be present and be kind to yourself, and really don't wait for the milestone that's going to make you happy. The relationship's not going to make you happy, the revenue goal is not going to make you happy, the bigger house isn't going to make you happy. Those are fun things to have, but you have to kind of choose that first. And then when you do, that like breath gets like put into your business, and you'll see like your entire business shift when you come from that like shifted perspective.
Oh my gosh, that's powerful. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And so, Sharon, I think we could probably talk for 3 or 4 hours. Like, there's so many avenues that we could like digest and unpack here. But with that, we're going to start wrapping up. I would love to plug any resources that you want to share with the audience that you have available. I know you already mentioned your bullet journal, but if there's any other resources, I know your podcast is coming out too with the rebrand. And then with that, also, where can they find you? I almost forgot my question.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, I always have something free on my site. Right now I have a free course. I think it's called Foundations of Empires. It's going to get updated soon, but like I always have free stuff on my website. So that's complimentsofsharon.com, and that's SHARON, like old lady name. So that's a good resource. And then I am probably most active on Instagram or LinkedIn, and that's Sharon E. Gutierrez on both platforms. And those are great places to find me and connect with me. And I'm always like, send me a DM, like reach out. Like I'm there. I'm not always good at answering them quickly, but I do see them and I will respond at some point.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. And We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.